Good morning. Another week has gone by, and here we are back again, worshiping God. What a great day this is when we come together and once again in unison turn to the God of the universe and know that He exists and that we love Him. How wonderful it is that He has not left us wanting to know, but rather has given us every single bit of information we could have. You know, there's a war going on right now in our nation, and that war, in all reality, is for which God is God. Is this man God, or is God God? And it basically stems from a poor educational system which has said there is no God. It started back many years ago with Nietzsche. Well, actually it started at the beginning, but we're more familiar with today's times, but Nietzsche said there is no God, and if there is no God, then man is God, and so on and so forth. And so the design of it all has to be looked at to see what is it that is true. Let's take a look now at which is Romans 1 and verse 20. And listen to what God has recorded there for us. Because when God records these things, they have to be scientifically provable. In other words, we have to be able to use science to prove them or show that they are truth. And when we do that, we can see what God says is true. Now, there's some things we can't prove because they're in the spiritual realm. But because God is correct about everything else, we know that those things we cannot validate are also true. In this case, however, look at what he says here in Romans 1, verse 20. It is a very scientific statement. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what? From what has been made, so that men are without excuse. In other words, everything that we see that has been created that we didn't have a thing to do with shows us there is a God, or there is a creator. So let's first examine the old question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And you know this question, and people have pondered it for years. And I remember when I was a younker, and I sat around discussing this with people. And ultimately, what do you come up with? Well, you realize that there has to be a beginning of the chicken and the egg, because if you had an egg and then a chicken and another egg and then a chicken, and let's go back the other way. Let's say a chicken and an egg that came from an egg, but an egg had to come from a chicken, but that chicken had to come from an egg, and so on, all the way back to the beginning. At what point would that begin? And in fact, most people think there had to be no beginning. In fact, nothing started it. However, we know that's a lie. And it's been validated by scientific experiments that are still on record today. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Hey, what came first was God. And He created the chicken, and He created the chicken to have the reproduction process, which makes an egg and produces the egg, and then another chicken, and so on. And we can know this, that there has to be a God, just by looking at nature. So that's pretty simple. You say chicken, egg, chicken, egg. Isn't there anything more difficult than that? Okay, let's talk about a few more things. You know, there is if you go out there and look at the stars at night, and if you were to take a picture and then years later take another picture and measure them, you'll see that the stars are expanding. In other words, they are going away from each other, and they're expanding across the great, vast, dark sky. And what we know about it is that because they are expanding, continually, there must have been a time when they were closer together. And that's called time's arrow. And if you follow that arrow thinking all the way to the end, there must have been a time where the stars had to have simply appeared. Had to have. Where would they have come from? There has to be that because of the time's arrow. And what about the thermodynamics? Well, we know that everything goes, one of the second law of thermodynamics is that everything goes from order to disorder. You buy a car today. In fact, just the other day, Brent bought him a new pickup. And he said, here's the reason why I bought that new pickup. He said, at my age, this pickup, according to all the vehicles I've been able to keep in the past, will now allow me to have that pickup through my 80s. And he figures, he's going to get old and he's going to die. Why? Why is he going to get old and die? Why is his pickup going to get old and die? Because everything goes from order to disorder. It does not do what evolution says. Everything goes from lesser order to greater order. In fact, it always goes down. That's very important to understand and to have here in your heart so that you can reject what man says and know that there is a God. And also, what about such thing as perpetual motion? Oh, what a beautiful idea that you could start something and you never have to be able to fix it again. I was listening to Walt, and Walt said he was wanted to get some lights out there for the parking lot, and they would be solar powered lights, and all you have to do is put up and you never touch them again. Really, never. Well, someday those cells will wear out. Someday those light bulbs will break. And you have to repair them because everything cannot stay going all the time. There's no such thing as perpetual motion. You've seen the little machines, where they got the little balls hanging from a stick, and you pull that first one back and they go click, 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 and they keep going. In fact, they'll drive you nuts. But they don't keep going, do they? Because you can't get the same size of reaction from a reaction, and so it just slows down and continues to slow down until finally it stops. But man has been possessed with the idea of being able to see that there is a perpetual motion because they long for there to be no God, and that way they have no responsibility over what they do. And they've made greater and greater and greater intricacies to this machine, but they cannot come up with a perpetual motion. And so we know there has to be something that is there to take care of the laws that are set. Speaking of that, let's take a look at 2 Peter 3 and 3 through 7 and see what Peter is saying. Now keep your finger there at Romans because we're going to come back there in a few minutes. See what Peter is saying about there can be no God. Look what he says in 2 Peter 3, verse 3. First of all, you must understand. There's interesting wordage here. Must and understand. Understand means what you stand on. And if you must understand, it's because you have to stand on what is solid truth. So he says, first of all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. But they deliberately forget that long ago by God's word the heavens existed and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for judgment and destruction of ungodly men. What are they saying? They are purposefully rejecting it by suppressing the truth and saying it did not happen. So, people who today want to say there is no God are just simply saying there is no God because I don't want a God and I don't want something that's over me. And so what do? They have to turn and worship something. They have to worship because that's the way God has designed us. And most people worship Mother Earth. I remember a few years ago, I went over to Russia. I mean, when I was first, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but probably 2005 or 6 or 7. And I was over there and at the my sister-in-law's house, and there was a knock on the door, and they came to me and they said, could you come in and talk with these people? So I go in there and talk with them, and the woman is crying, and she said, all of my fathers and my father, my brothers, my family members have died for Mother Russia. What does it mean, Mother Russia? What do we mean by Mother Earth? It means this is the thing that gives us life, and that is a lie. Because the thing that gives us life is God, and He provided it through the process, just like the chicken and the egg, that we get life from the earth. And He gave us dominion over it and everything it produces, except for another human. And they have to worship Mother Earth. They have to worship Mother Russia. They have to worship something because they are designed to do that. You can't change it. And the only way they can do it then is, if they're not going to worship God, is to suppress that truth. But worship must come out. And what about yoga? Hey, yoga, well, you say, well, it's just an exercise. And why are you picking on yoga? And here's the reason why. Because it is the positions and poses and everything are designed so that you'll be aligned with the universe to be able to correct wherever physical problem and to be able to open the chakras of your mind to be able to see the truth. That is a false God. And what about PETA? PETA, boy, the protection people for the ethical treatment of animals, they care more about animals than they do people, and they are more concerned about them than abortions or any abuse to people. Now, I'm not saying that animals ought to be abused. God forbid. I think a man ought to do properly, and God even specifically tells how to do animal husbandry, and to be careful with what God has blessed you with. However, they make it a religion. It becomes a religion, just like tree huggers and everything else becomes a religion, and they will die for it. And that brings us about that any other false religion. Look at what it says in Romans 1:25. Hope you had your finger there. Romans 1:25. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Meaning, even if you don't worship God, God's going to be praised. But however, what you are worshiping is going to be a created thing, because that's all there is the created things or the God who created them. And so false gods are worshipped all the time, from the Dalai Lama to the Hindus to voodoo to witchcraft to Harry Potter, to every single thing that sneaks into your life and takes away the worship of God, a false religion has to suppress the truth and reject it, but something has to be worshiped. Very important to see that is true. And then what about the religion of yourself? You know what? I can find what's true. I know what's right. I'm the one who knows everything, and I can find it within myself. And myself is more important than God. What about man is God? Look in Romans 1:22. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. What does that mean? A man is a fool when he thinks that there is no God and he chooses to go his own way, or he makes God up the way he wants him to be. You know, I listen to a lot of debates between atheists and Christians, and it always boils down on the atheist side to a feeling. Well, if there is a God, how is it he can do these things? And I was listening to a broadcast yesterday, I think. Can't remember whether it was a show or whether it was the news, but as I was listening to it, they said, how can these things be happening to us if there is a God? And let me tell you something. The reason why is because there is a God who is for you, and there is a God who is against you named Satan. And you must understand that, and he's the source of the lie that there is no God and we worship everything else. And then to notice that we are so small as a human. You can't add to the height. You can't add to your age. You can't change and go back and be younger. You can't increase in size or intelligence. You can't be anything but what you are, and you're bound by the laws that are already set in motion. All you can do is love God or love yourself, which means you're following Satan. So now, if that's true, if there is a God, then which God? And there can only be one supreme being. Listen to what Luke says in chapter 12 and verse 22 through 28. Listen. Chapter 12, 22 through 28. Then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. Wow. And if that's so, then we have to realize there are set laws for every single thing. Look at the ravens, look at the lilies, look at everything and how it goes. And if there are set laws for all things, who set the laws? It has to be something greater than the thing. But we can use these laws, and we use these laws for us. When we go against them, guess what? It doesn't work. You can't make salt with just one part of the chemical. You have to have the rest of it as well. You can't breathe air that's only this. You have to have both parts. And you can't, you're inhaling oxygen, you're exhaling carbon dioxide. Those are set laws. You can't even understand what you're doing or why, but there they are. And you can use those laws to be able to build and to grow, and that's who we're supposed to be, not tearing down and destroying as we see all around us. And we can use those laws because we can see them and we can determine them and understand they are set by God and use them for God's work. And all these laws work in unison. How does a plane fly? Because it uses the law of flight and the law of gravity, which works with the law of gravity. And once the law of flight is over, the law of gravity takes over. They work together. You can use them to play baseball, to play football. Why in the world anybody want to play soccer? I don't know, but you can. So all these things are used in unison. The laws work together. We push a key in and we turn the key. The little tumblers work. Inside there, it sends electrical currents, and the electrical current starts the engine, and we're using all the laws God has set for us to be able to go down the road. And we're on the road because of gravity. And the road stays where it is, and the concrete's mixed the way it is, and everything works perfectly because our God, our one supreme being, everything works in unison and shows there is only one God. We can't say there's a God of the earth, there's Mother Earth, or there's the mountains we worship, or the trees we worship, or the air we worship, or the land we worship. No, the water, no. There is one God, there is one supreme being, and all things work in unison. There has to be something greater than these things. If there's a car that's been made, we know that there's a mind that was greater than that car. If there's a world, then we know that there's something that's greater than that world. If there is a country here or a land here such as Oregon, we know that there has to be something that created all this beauty, that made all this. And when we realize how small man is, we know there has to be something greater than us. And we're standing on this earth. We know there has to be something greater than the earth. We see it from further away. We know we're so small we can't even pick ourselves out. We're almost invisible the further away we get. And then when we realize there is a universe and there is a greatness and vastness and it all works in unison, there has to be something greater than the universe. Listen to what he says in Romans 2, verses 5 through 8. But because of your stubbornness and your unrepentant heart, you're storing up wrath against yourself for the day of God's wrath, when his righteous judgment will be revealed. Look, don't be stubborn and ignore that he is God. 6. God will give each person according to what he has done. To those who by persistence in doing good seek glory, honor, and immortality, he gives us eternal life. But for those who are seeking and who reject the truth and following evil, self-seeking, there will be wrath and anger. What do you think? Is God, or is there no God? There has to be a God who is for us, a God who's designed it all, a God who is telling us what to do, a God who has said, wake up, pay attention, it's written throughout the nature. Know that I am God. Don't fail yourself. Don't fail God, the reason you were created. Don't fail life. Be God's man. Of course there's a God. Nature and everything you can see proves it. Thank you.